Well, everyone, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is one of those iPhones that came out a couple of years ago. And the thing with this particular iPhone is that, in my opinion, it still is a very, very good device. It still has, a lot of features and a lot of pros, but there are a few cons with this iPhone, and there might be some better alternatives with this type of device too. So we'll take a look at this iPhone, we'll see how it holds up in 2025, see if it's still worth buying, but I will tell you, there might be some better alternatives. And you can pick up those iPhones that I would recommend this year down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 12 Pro Max. This particular iPhone on the front side is giving you a massive 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. Now this panel, it's a very, very big size panel. And because this phone came out in 2020, for like 3 to 4 years, Apple kept it this exact same size. Before this, it was 6.5 inches. Then this one brought 6.7. And I think Apple just changed it with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. So for several generations, they kept it at 6.7 inches. And with this, design of this panel and the way it looks, it is a very good looking panel for how old it is. Your 1200 nits of brightness, 1284p, it's fairly high resolution. The only two things that are kind of lacking, I would say 3 things that are lacking on this display compared to the, most common displays you get on Pro Max phones now. Number 1, you're getting the notch. The notch is a little bit outdated. It's still not that terrible, but you are missing out on the dynamic island that a lot of the Pro model phones have. Number 2, the brightness on this panel isn't nearly as bright as the competition, even when compared to the iPhone 16s, but this thing is like half as bright as compared to like a Pixel 9 Pro or something like that. So this phone definitely is missing out a little bit there, but the biggest issue and the biggest gripe I have with this panel is the lack of higher refresh rate. So this is a 60 Hz panel, meaning the screen is not going to refresh as fast. The 16 Pro Max, the 13 Pro Max, even the successor of this thing, those had 120 Hz displays, making the phone feel so much faster. Unfortunately, this phone does not have that feature. The sides and the bottom, you're getting a flat-sided phone with a lightning port at the bottom, frosted glass back, which still feels very premium, massive capability, triple camera setup. The capability and the quality of this phone are still top tier, right? The way this phone feels in the hand, it still feels very similar to a 16 Pro Max. And actually, I'm going to be honest, the fact that this thing has the reflective sides around it, I actually do miss that a lot on this phone. So I would probably tell you from that side as well, this phone holds up very, very well from the build quality standpoint, but the display is a little bit lackluster compared to the competition or the phones nowadays, and this phone does not have a USB Type-C. That is also another kind of issue you might run into when compared to the competition. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too, is that with the iPhone 12 Pro Max, one of its biggest reasons why some people might even look at this phone is because of that price tag. This is a sub $400 phone right now, depending on the condition. And a lot of people might look at this phone and that price tag and think to themselves that it is a really good priced phone. And I will be honest, it is a good priced phone, right? It's not a terrible phone and it does have a lot of capability when it comes down to that price tag. But like I said before, when you do look at some other used phones, I think a 13 Pro Max, which is like a little bit more expensive than this thing, might be a better deal for some people than this thing. So again, not the biggest deal in the world. I think this phone is still a very killer phone in a lot of ways, but that is just one other thing that you might run into within this type of device. So not a big deal, but from a price tag standpoint, that's kind of how this phone kind of fares up there. Now with the actual camera quality standpoint, this thing is giving you that triple camera setup on the back, a 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. And you're also getting a 12 megapixel sensor on the front. Now, definitely when it comes down to the camera quality here, I think this phone's camera quality is still very, very good. This is still, I wouldn't say very, very good, but it's good, right? It gets the job done. It was great when it first came out. Nowadays, though, as I mentioned before, this camera is slightly outdated compared to the competition. Even compared to phones that came out in 2020, I'm going to be honest, the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra has a significantly better camera than this thing. So that is one of those situations you might run into here where this phone really isn't going to be giving you that great of an experience, whereas on something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's not going to be that great. But compared to the competition like the S20 Ultra, S20 Plus, those ones did give you better cameras of that year. So that right there is just another one of those minor things to keep in mind there too. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it is one of those situations you might run into. Personally for me though, the fact that this thing has 4K 60 on the front and the back, the fact that this phone's still giving you pretty decent capability there, I think is another really nice thing going on for this type of phone. So from that side, that kind of covers it up for the most part there. Now, when it comes down to the actual, software longevity on this phone, the big thing you have to keep in mind here is that the iPhone 12 Pro Max is kind of in this situation where this phone, it's, still supported with software, which is great. You're still going to be getting a long supported phone here, which is really, really nice, but it's not going to be it's not going to be the longest supported phone of all time. So this thing is basically third in line of getting drop support, meaning it's still here, but it's going to be getting iOS, probably going to be getting iOS 19. It's going to be getting iOS 20. Maybe it will last until iOS 21. There's a likelihood where this phone might end up giving you that. And that in and of itself kind of would be like a pretty big thing. And I personally would really love having a phone like this if it would last up until iOS 21. Again, we don't have any way of kind of verifying that, but that would be a really cool thing if that does end up happening. Now, beyond that, another very big thing to keep in mind here is the battery life. This phone right now still, is giving you a 3,687 milliamp battery. But once again, the thing you're going to have to keep in mind is that this phone, it's not going to last, the battery is not going to last the same amount. It's not going to be 100% all the time. So the battery degradation on this thing has definitely hit, even on my models. So with something like the 12 Pro Max, these phones notoriously never had the best type of battery life, but you might be in a situation where this phone, it might not be giving you like that great of a battery life right now. So kind of keep that in mind. Again, not that big of a deal, but that could just be one thing you might run into here within this type of phone. So that kind of covers it up there a little bit too. Now, on top of all those things, the performance of this phone, it's still giving you the Apple A14 Bionic chip inside, and it's still giving you 6 gigabytes of RAM. So definitely, I would say when it comes down to the performance levels and just the RAM of this phone in general, this phone is a great performing phone, kind of, for when it first came out. It wasn't the biggest upgrade coming from its predecessor, but it was still a very good phone. I still have a lot of, love about this type of device too. But the thing you're going to have to remember with the iPhone 12 Pro Max is that this phone, like I said, when compared to the competition now, it's not really that great of a performing phone. I'm going to be honest, right? It's not the best. It's still good and it still gets the job done for the most part. But as I mentioned before, compared to a lot of the competition, a lot of the other devices nowadays are giving you better performing phones, especially with better performing displays, because this phone doesn't really feel like the fastest performing phone because of that display. So that right there, I think is just another one of those things to kind of keep in mind there as well. So overall, I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max sits in an interesting place. I think this phone is still a great phone. I think it's still a good phone to buy, but it really wouldn't be like the first phone I'd recommend people to buy. I think the iPhone 13 Pro or the iPhone 13 Pro Max are better iPhones to go and pick up. This thing, I think it still has, a lot of capability to, if you're going to use it and everything. But I think something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, it just kind of, doesn't hit all the boxes for me like the iPhone 13 Pro Max does. For a used old phone, the iPhone 13 Pro Max makes a lot more sense for me than something like the iPhone, than something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.